Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm Father Jim Korda. Wineskins is a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of issues and topics, all from a Catholic perspective. Wineskins is brought to you through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our program today, I will interview Father Jeff Mickler from the television series Spotlight, celebrating the 75th anniversary of the foundation of the Society of St. Paul in Canfield. We will also hear more information on Saints Cornelius and Cyprian. And today, as the Church celebrates a 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will get a deeper insight into those particular Sunday readings. That and more on Wineskins. Catholic Charities is an important part of the life of the Church and her members. To share with us an important issue is Jill Valentic. With me again is Jill Valentic, who is the Executive Director of Catholic Charities for Ashtabula County. Welcome back to Wineskins.
Thank you, Father Cordes. It's great to be here.
You know, the last time you were here, we spent some time talking in general about yourself and also about the agency up in Ashtabula County. I think what we'd like to do today is kind of focus on one aspect and one ministry that you provide many people in that county, and that's the area of homelessness. Talk about homelessness as a really kind of a problem that really needs to be addressed in our diocese, but also in our country.
So homelessness can be addressed in many different ways. When you hear someone talk about, boy, that person is homeless, that's an image that people see in their mind, what homelessness is. But do we really know what a homeless person looks like? So many times I use the word to describe someone who is homeless as someone who is invisible in our community. Generally, someone walking down the road doesn't mean that they're homeless. They may fit an image that maybe people might have in their mind, but technically maybe that person is feeling disenfranchised but does have a home. But it might not be the best home. So the definition of homelessness is generally someone who's living in a place that's not meant for habitation, like a building that's broken down and you can just squat in it, kind of, for lack of better terms. There's someone who's living in their car or at our local shelter. So when we think about homelessness, it's about where is that person? Where do they lay their head when they go to bed at night? Or do they even go to bed at all? Do they walk the streets at night and then find a place to sleep during the day? Or do they find a place to sleep on a temporary basis and then they find out that they can't stay there and then they have to find another location? Technically, homelessness is also being at risk of homelessness too. And that's also known as being precariously housed. And those two areas, being homeless and precariously housed, get sometimes confused. Because if I was living in someone else's home and it wasn't my home, I would say I was homeless too, because it wasn't mine. So when we're thinking about what the problem is, it's really what's the opportunity? And we think about the opportunity of change. And also, how do we connect resources to those that are in that situation? Because it can happen at any time. Many of the people that we've worked at our agency in Ashtabula County, many of them have had a hardship. Their hardship has set the tone for where they would eventually live. And in some cases, they were able to get the help they needed to move forward. In other cases, they didn't have enough supports to get to the people who would help them get those supports. So we're very mindful in general about thinking about homelessness to where is that person at in their life? Do they have the supports? Do they know where to get support? And are we assuming that someone's homeless when maybe they're not? Or is their home not good? And do we need to help them build a safer environment for themselves?
And when we're talking about those who are homeless, what exactly is the agency doing for them? Are they looking for quality shelter, or are they providing funds to give them a place to live that's better than where they're at? What are some of those steps, briefly, that you do for them?
So the first thing is our agency, you can walk in anytime, and you can speak to someone. We have a homeless outreach caseworker who will talk and listen. And listen. Let's just say listen first and hear what's going on. Talk to the person, hear where they're at, what their goals are, find out a little bit about their situation, how they got to this point, And then we try to fit them into what their goals are. So what is your goal? It could be, I just need a box of food. Or it could be, I would like to have some hygiene items, and then maybe I'll come back later. Or it could be, we provide them the resources and connect them to our local shelter. So then we can get to the next step, hopefully with locating housing and fitting them into some of the grants that are out there. Our agency does work closely with some of the funding called Rapid Rehousing, and it can help substantially someone get back onto their feet independently and on their own, out of their homeless situation. So there's many different scenarios, but we try to make it as free as possible. So it's their decision, not ours. Clients have the right to self-determination, so we're not going to tell people what to do, but we can provide them all the resources and tools. And if they want to think about it or start however they want to do, it's on their plan. It's their time.
What would the folks that are with us that want to help specifically in the area of homelessness, what can they do for your agency?
What they can do is, if you feel that you've met with someone who's in a homeless situation, to have them come to our agency. Let us talk to them. Let us give us the resources they need or connect them to the resources. Sometimes it's as easy as connecting them with family. And we have the tools and the expertise to do that. So that's what I always say. That's the best way you can help us help those that are homeless or at risk of homelessness.
And Jill, give us address or phone number that they can contact the agency.
Yes, we're at the First Commonwealth Bank, 4200 Park Avenue on the 3rd floor, located in Ashtabula, Ohio. And our phone number is 440-992-2121.
Jill Valentic, as always, a pleasure to have you on Wineskins.
Thank you.
Continued best wishes in your work and ministry, especially to the homelessness. And thank you for directing the great work that happens up in Ashtabula County.
Thank you.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. St. Cornelius was a pope, and St. Cyprian was a bishop, and both were martyrs. To tell us more is Sister Joyce Candidi. She is a member of the Oblate Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the director of the Office for Religious.
According to the Office of Readings, Saint Cyprian was beheaded at Carthage on September 14, 258. His feast was celebrated on that date in Rome in the crypt in which Saint Cornelius was buried. Saint Cornelius died in exile at the port in Rome in September 253 and was venerated as a martyr. The joint celebration is very ancient. However, when the Feast of the Exaltation of the Holy Cross was introduced in the West in the 7th century, this feast was transferred to September 16th. The two saints are also mentioned together in the Roman canon of the Mass. Cornelius was elected pope in 251, and he governed the church until 253. During his short pontificate, he was involved in the controversy over the sacrament of penance. The question at issue was how public sinners and apostates are to be reconciled in the church. Before his conversion at the age of 25, Cyprian served as a lawyer. He was elected bishop in 249 and became the metropolitan of approximately 150 bishops in northern Africa. During the persecution of Dacius, in which Pope Fabian was martyred at Rome, Cyprian also became involved in the problem of the apostate Christians who had returned to the church. He also took a negative stand on the validity of baptism conferred by heretics, and in so doing, he opposed the decision of Pope Stephen I. Cyprian himself was a victim of the persecution of Valerian, first being exiled and later sentenced to be beheaded. His relics were transferred to Lyons, France in the 9th century. In the opening prayer of the Mass for these two saints, we read, God our Father, in Saints Cornelius and Cyprian, you have given your people an inspiring example of dedication to the pastoral ministry and constant witness to Christ in their suffering. We ask that their prayers and faith will give us courage to work for the unity of your church. The bond of unity between the churches of Rome and of Carthage was very strong, partly because Carthage was the most Latinized province of the empire. In Cyprian's letter to Cornelius, found in the Office of Readings, he writes, "After all, we have the same church, the same mind, the same unbroken harmony. Why then should a priest not take pride in the praise given to a fellow priest, as though it were given to him? What brotherhood fails to rejoice in the happiness of its brothers wherever they are? For Saint Cyprian, the Church is the only way to salvation. He cannot have God for his father, he said, who has not the Church for his mother." The relevance of these two saints is first of all that through their prayers and example, we should cultivate a deeper love for the universal Church, as well as loyalty to our own local churches. Secondly, we can take to heart the responsory for the Office of Readings. Let us arm ourselves in full strength and prepare ourselves for the ultimate struggle with blameless hearts, true faith, and unyielding courage. The opening prayer states, "God our Father, in Saints Cornelius and Cyprian, you have given your people an inspiring example of dedication to the pastoral ministry and constant witness to Christ in their suffering. May their prayers and faith give us courage to work for the unity of your church." For Wineskins, I'm Sister Joyce Candidi.
Talking with Father Jeff Mickler of the Society of St. Paul. The Society of St. Paul has been here in the diocese, in particular in this space, since 1944. And over those 75 years, we have witnessed tremendous apostolate, tremendous ministry that has taken place. Let's talk about those various forms of the apostolate and ministries that come from the Society of St. Paul and the charism of your founder.
Well, we moved here for two reasons. Spiritual reasons, so we'd have a place to form our members, especially in novitiate. But part of our formation in the Society of St. Paul has always been apostolic as well. So they wouldn't simply pray and meditate all day, but they would work. And as soon as we got here, we started planning and promoting the launching of a new magazine, Catholic Home Messenger. In Italy, we had Familia Christiana, and still have it. At its peak, Familia Christiana was having 1,500,000 copies weekly, with about 125 to 145 pages weekly. It was the largest Catholic magazine of any type in the world. So we were hoping something like that would happen in the States. Christian Family was already taken by a Protestant denomination, so we named our magazine the Catholic Home Messenger. And at its peak, it reached between 150,000 and 200,000. And it would have devotions, it would have theology, it would have cooking recipes, little tips like that, something for the whole home. And that reached out across the country pretty effectively, but that meant our men took part in the designing, the production, the mailing of an awful lot of magazines there. Another element was how to reach out to priests, and we started with a clerical magazine, Pastoral Life, and it reached a peak circulation of about 7,000. It would have homily outlines, it would have news, it would have theology, to cater to what the average diocesan priest would need to enrich his ministry. We had other apostolates begin to spring up as well, especially devotional ministries to St. Anthony, an Italian saint who actually was not Italian, but most loved by the Italians because St. Anthony of Padua. And all of that helped to enrich the church. We also had like a men's retreat group here early on where they would come to have spiritual renewal on our property here.
I know that prior to the taping, you and I and Brother Dominic looked through a lot of different photographs and pictures, memorabilia documenting the founding and the progress and the apostolates here at the Society. Let's talk about going back to that print. We saw that wonderful picture of Bishop McFadden blessing the printing presses here. How important and how vital was that back then when the society first started here?
We felt and still feel that all of our printing presses were our pulpits, and that we would be preaching the Word of God through them. In fact, we would name presses different saints' names, Saint Joseph, Saint Paul, and the printer or the operator would especially say a prayer at the beginning of every day for the blessing of his work. We have a blue-collar spirituality where priests and brothers alike would get our hands dirty. So you'd see a priest running a linotype machine or a printing press or a folding machine, along with the brothers as well. And so we all had that hands-on type of spirituality, especially early on. One of our founding priests was Father Stanislaus Cravella. I only knew him as an elderly gentleman who was always in editing or administration, but I found an interview about him when he was a young cleric in Rome, and they said, he was doing presses, he was printing at 11 o'clock at night. And I'm thinking, Father Stanislaus on a printing press? And it gave me a whole different vision of that wonderful priest.
We'd also like to talk about the sisters. They were here present for a number of years. Talk about their ministry and apostolate.
The Daughters of St. Paul actually came with us for the first year because they wanted to get into the diocese, and so it was a package deal. And for the first year, they helped us with our cooking or cleaning, helping us get set up here spiritually, helping us transform a barn into a chapel, all of these elements. But once in the diocese, then they got permission to open up their own bookstore downtown, what is now the Chancery office and the cathedral. And they not only did a lot of good for the diocese, but they picked up quite a few local vocations because of their presence here. They were replaced by our pious disciples of the Divine Master, who are the contemplative branch of the Pauline family, who serve the priesthood in multiple ways, and they help the elderly priest in nursing homes, they make vestments, they design chapels, and most of all, they pray for us. And they came here, and for decades, they did a marvelous job supporting the priests and brothers here. And they're no longer with us in this community. We still miss them, and we're still appreciative of all their sacrifices and all they did for us.
Let's talk about, in our last 2 minutes, about the chapel here at the Society of St. Paul. We know that many people are familiar with it and come to celebrate in it. Talk about the chapel.
This chapel is where the devotions and the apostolate of the Society of St. Paul merge. The great mosaic behind the chapel is the glory of St. Paul, where he's there with his sword and book and looking out towards the heavens. Beneath him are the doctors of the church and Pope Leo kneeling before them, because this was a place of learning, of reflection, a place where people would be formed and reformed in their religious consecration. And now, thanks to our merging with the Diocese of Youngstown in the media apostolate, it's been a source of Mass for shut-ins, both online, broadcast, and narrowcast, and reaching out to the world through our YouTube presence.
For more pertinent information and to listen to Wineskins, visit www.doi.org, the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
Our song today is from the CD called Tender Hearted. It is by Jeanne Cotter and courtesy of GIAmusic.com.
Sanctify me, blood of Jesus, inflame me. Kingdom of Jesus, come to me. Grace of Jesus, replenish me. Mercy of Jesus, pity me. Sanctity of Jesus, sanctify me.
As we celebrate this 24th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will hear more about the sacred scriptures by Father Shawn Conoboy.
There are many important dates that we remember. Birthdays, our own or those of our family and friends, wedding anniversaries, the year we graduated from high school or college. We remember any number of important events in our lives and in the lives of those that we care about and in the lives of the groups that we belong to. We remember when certain organizations were founded. We remember the dates of important events in our nation and in our world. And of course, we remember the events of salvation history. In all of this, the key to remembering is repeated reminders. And so there are days designated throughout the year for remembering. We mark things on our calendars and we receive electronic reminders. We have liturgical feasts to commemorate the important events of the life of the Church. We have repeated reminders because we easily forget. We forget the details. We forget the people involved. We forget the event itself. We forget when it happened, or we remember it inaccurately. And we want to never forget. But the key is repeated reminders, especially for the things that we more easily forget. And as the readings today show, somehow the things that we often forget are the things of faith, are the events of salvation history, are the things that happen in our spiritual life. By the time we reach them in the first reading, the people of Israel have been in the desert for only a short time. Moses is on the mountain, concealed from their sight by a cloud, and before the 40 days are up, they have turned to their experience in Egypt. They have turned back to their experience of slavery there. In a short time, they have forgotten the amazing events of the Exodus, the 10 plagues, walking dry-shod through the Red Sea. Even Aaron, who was present with Moses in the conversations with Pharaoh, leads the people in worshiping the golden calf. We forget, like the son in the gospel who fails to acknowledge that what he wants, what he needs, is already found in the Father's house. We can forget that what we have in faith, what we have in the Church. We can forget the sustenance that we received there, the truth found in God's revelation. Like the older son of the gospel who fails to appreciate the Father's love, even though he is never physically far from it, he fails to appreciate the depths of forgiveness the Father is capable of. We too can be complacent or jealous with regard to the things of the faith, and yet never be physically far from the worshiping community. And that is why we hear this story over and over again. That is why this gospel tells the same story 3 times. The sheep that is lost and then recovered by the shepherd, the coin that is lost and then recovered by the woman, and the son who is lost and then recovered by the Father. It is the story of God's search for us, and the story is repeated because we are being reminded of the depths of God's love, of His forgiveness, of His desire for union with us. For some reason, we easily forget this, but God never fails us. Throughout the year, our liturgical feasts are reminders of God's infinite love. Throughout our lives, the sacraments, baptism, confirmation, marriage, confession, these are deep encounters with God's love. God has shown us that He wants to be one with us. He wants communion with us each year, each season, each month, each week, each day. And He has shown us that without a regular reminder, we will forget. If not everything, at least something. The Eucharist is our weekly reminder of how important our relationship with God is, of our weekly encounter with His love, our weekly remembrance of the most important events in our life and of those who are dear to us. It is our weekly opportunity to join St. Paul in saying, I have been mercifully treated because I acted out of ignorance, but the grace of our Lord has been abundant. To the King of ages be honor and glory forever. Each week we have the opportunity to encounter Christ. We have the opportunity and a reminder of His care for us. We have an opportunity to make a response to Him and to offer praise. We do this so that we don't forget. For Wineskins and Father Shawn Conoboy,
Is it true that life is not fair? Do we get what we deserve? We actually get more, and thank God that He does not give us justice. Aren't you glad that all of our lives lives and dies at the hands of God, that loves mercy so much that He violates the universal laws of fairness? Wineskins is a production of CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. It is brought to you by the Annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda, wishing you a beautiful week.
What have you done for your marriage today?
I gave my wife a hug this morning. I told her I love her.
I did her hair this morning. I think it looks pretty good.
I cooked my husband's favorite breakfast.
I bought her an orchid.
What have I done for my marriage today? I sent my husband a love email.
I read the newspaper to my wife, and it cracked her up. But she's still laughing.
What have you done for your marriage today? Make a change for the better. Need help? Go to foryourmarriage.org, a message from the Catholic Church.
They say America is the land of opportunity, but for some, life isn't so easy. Right now in America, 1 in 6 children lives below the poverty line. That's nearly 13 million children of all races, all across our country. Where do you draw the line and get involved? You can make a difference in more ways than you think. Go to povertyusa.org today, because 1 in 6 children in poverty is one too many. A message from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development.